Welcome to Busy in Business, the weekly Saturday morning show dedicated to people who want to take control of their life with the freedom and independence to earn what they want by working how they want, when they want, where they want, to live a happier and more fulfilled life. Listen in as your hosts Adam Clatsoff and Brian Leonard explore today's new path to achieve financial success and personal freedom. Now, here's Adam and Brian.
We have a very interesting show today. We're going to be talking about the fastest growing segment of our population, I believe.
Isn't it amazing that today, you mentioned Florida's growth last week, that we're now the third most populated state behind California and Texas.
And they're all over 70.
And well, they're not all over 70, but certainly in our state alone, 40,000 people a month are turning age 65.
Well, I don't know. I watched a television program last night which got me thinking about this. You ever watch Seinfeld?
Oh, once in a while,
Kramer
yes.
moves down to Del Vista Mar and he runs as president of the association. I mean, it's a scream. It's an absolute riot what these folks are doing.
I bet.
It's different, though. I mean, I remember years ago when I was 15 or 16 years old, a fellow named Gibbs Spade, I remember his name to this day. He was a New York Life agent, and he was selling my father a retirement plan. And my father called me over and said, Gib, I want you to meet my retirement plan. The parents expected it then.
Sure.
My mother had a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. She had 4 children, 3 boys, by the way, that's a posse. 3 boys, 1 girl, and my father's parents, and we all lived together. We were very well off. It's a different world today.
Very different world. You know, today, if you look at just the changing growth or the demand or the future outlook, the numbers of people that are turning age 65 each year, the projections are growing to double what they currently are by the year 2030. That's almost mind-boggling. Life expectancy, Adam, has increased. I mean, people in 1960, for example, or 1950, the average life expectancy was 68.
Well, and that changes, because when I came into the insurance business in 1969, we always used age 65 as retirement age, which meant you stopped making any money at all.
Sure.
The fact of the matter is that's not the way it works today. By and large, most people at 65 are okay. It's 75 that's the problem.
Sure, and trying not to outlive their money. You know, the aging baby boomers, we all talk about that. People that after World War II, certainly all the births that occurred following World War II, but there's going to be a 75% increase in the number of Americans turning age 65 and requiring assisted living or nursing home care or home health care. They're going to require senior services.
But don't you really want to keep your parents, if possible, in their home?
If possible, yes. But, you know, the homes are changing now. We have widows and widowers living alone now at a higher rate than ever before.
I'll tell you what else has changed it, too. Is today it's when I was growing up again, I'm 77 years old, so you old timers can walk along with me on this. You wound up retiring in the city that you had lived in and your parents had lived in. Today, kids go off to college, meet somebody in Los Angeles,
sure,
get married and have kids in Los Angeles, and you're over here in Florida, or you are living in New York with your kids, and now you've left Long Island and come down here. The families have separated physically.
Most certainly, and that's part of the theme of today's show is because of the changing family structure. It has changed certainly over the last, well, you mentioned, for example, your mom and dad. I know that my dad, for example, is turning age 90. He lives alone in that large home that 7 of us grew up in, but, you know, thank goodness he's still in good health.
There's no one else living with him?
There's no one else living with him.
At 90?
At 90. He's, that independent New Englander. But, you know, if you look at the changing family structure, you know, more than 1/4, that's 27% of women over the age of 65 live alone.
Do you want to live to be 90?
No.
Yeah.
Not unless I'm my dad.
That's easy to say, though, isn't it?
It sure is. But, you know, this whole changing family structure, you know, it's part of this future demand, this growth, and certainly an amazing opportunity in that particular sector of
Well, you know, when you
business
think of
fields.
franchising, and we always think of food shops and stuff like this, and those things have done very well and are still doing very well. But the reality is the marketplace is changing, and you should be thinking about franchises perhaps that are available for a changing marketplace.
Most certainly. And, you know, today there's over 75 different franchise categories outside of just food that we normally think of franchising. And certainly there's so many different types of opportunities that it can range from the tens of thousands of dollars of the investment to franchise up to of course, the $1 million.
And I think by and large that grandparents realize they're becoming more reliant. Like you take me, for instance. My tech expert in my family is my 10-year-old grandson. When I have trouble with my cell phone, I take it over to him and he fixes it. I don't know what's going on.
You don't have to tell me. I sit in an office with you, and computers are not your thing, Adam.
If I even walk past a computer, it crashes.
As yours did this earlier this week.
Always, constantly. So this person we're speaking with today, tell me about him.
Well, Frank Samson is the founder of Senior Care Authority, and we're really delighted to have his expertise and join us in this morning's show. From all those categories of franchises, Frank really represents this whole new breed of opportunity to be able to serve the senior care markets. You know, in his past, he not only the founder of Senior Care Authority, but he's also the founder of the Aging Boomers radio and podcast that he puts out each week. He's been in the consulting business and the franchise consulting business for over 30 years, so he's got that insight that he can share with us today. He's a member of the Society of Certified Senior Advisors, so he knows what he's talking about. And let's get him on right now. Frank, are you with us this morning?
I am glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. I know it's a little bit early out there in California for you, and we thank you for joining us.
How old are you, Frank?
My pleasure.
I'm just curious,
I'm,
Frank.
I'm in the early 60s. You got me by a little bit.
Okay, so you know what you're talking about. You've been around long enough.
I'm 63 years young, not old.
Yeah.
You're a bunch of kids.
Yeah. Well, Frank, you've successfully opened what now? 30 some odd franchise opportunities among 50 plus or 50 locations. What's the story behind Senior Care Authority?
Well, like a lot of our franchisees who got in the business, I myself got interested in it due to a lot of things that I went through with other family members, my parents, and it's challenging, when you have a loved one that is needing care and trying to get the proper support and guidance. We all plan, or most of us do plan for death, because that's 100% sure. All right. But what a lot of people don't plan for is, long-term care. And you brought up some statistics that are so true that still it's not 100% sure, but your dad, you said, is 90 years old and independent, but there's still so many, people out there, probably about 75% of them that are 70 years or older, that are 65 years and older, that are going to need some sort of long-term care. So I went through it with my own family, became very interested in it, and I took time off over a year, and I really researched the industry. And there are a few different models in the senior care side of the business. There's several models out there, and I felt that this model fit more with my particular interests. And so I started it from scratch.
Well, when you say, let me interrupt you there for a moment. When you say your model, do you actually give the care? What exactly is your model?
So our model is we give advice to the families. Our main concentration is helping a family find a place for their loved one to live and get proper care. All right, and you brought up those terms. That could be assisted living. That could be if they need a place to live, like memory care. nursing, we'll assist them with as well, but we try to keep people out of nursing, we best we can. But I would say, assisted living and memory care, that's the bulk of what we do. But when I say we're giving advice, we are, if like you said, you'd like to live at, a lot of people would like to live at home the rest of their life. And if they can, and if the, affordability is there and everything and the logistics with the family, great. And we'll assist them with that as well. We don't provide them, we don't do home care, but we'll help them to find a company or a caregiver. So that's what we call our elder care consulting. So,
do you determine what level of care they need? Let's say they need palliative care. Do you determine that?
We will, if we feel that, from what we see, that they maybe need palliative care, hospice, whatever. I mean, we're not, medical professionals, but we will guide them in that direction and have them. The thing is we're that sounding board and we're that advisor.
How do people hear about you?
Point them in the right.
Why would I get in touch with you? How would I hear about you?
Mainly through professionals within the industry. So we get a lot of referrals from doctors, from discharge planners, from elder law attorneys, from financial planners, other in-home care companies. I give you a list a mile long, but it's more our model where we get most of our business. So we do marketing on the internet as well, okay, but where our franchisees get most of their business is through referrals from within the healthcare and senior services industry.
Okay, so
yeah.
I'm sorry, Frank. I'm in Florida. My dad's up in New York, and let's say, for example, and I don't know the providers and that are in the area if he ever needed the type of care that was ultimately determined that would be best for him. I mean, I couldn't go about researching from where I am. I'd have to probably rely on someone that's in that area, knows and has relationships, I would assume, with the elder care providers of all different types in that area, and they're the person that would probably be best suited for me to contact.
Right. I mean, let's use that example. Let's just say that somehow you were referred to our person in Florida where you are. All right. And you said, well, my dad's up in New York. Then our person in Florida would put you in touch with, somebody in New York that could help you in your family locally. All right. So, you're going to do one of two things. You may go online and start doing searches and maybe you'll find us, or you're going to go to a local professional and say, I'm not sure what to do here. I got to get my dad help in New York. Well, I know this company here in Florida. Maybe they know somebody. So that's kind of how it works.
Sure.
We have a, network around the country. So our franchisees are referring to each other all the time.
I would imagine that it's fairly complex in terms of if I were to go on the internet and do a search, I'd be inundated, wouldn't I?
You would. You would. I do recommend that, that people really go to their local, professionals. Obviously coming right to us, that'd be great. But, our type of model is relatively new. I mean, I'm on a board right now with others in the industry forming an association now of those professionals in what we call the placement industry. Senior placement is what we call it.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody hears about senior care or a senior care business, they do think of home care. They think of a company that's providing caregiving at home. And though that's such an important part of our industry and so much needed, there's a lot of areas now that are pretty, inundated also, and, with those organizations, though they do a wonderful job. That's not what we do. I mean, we're kind of that next step where somebody may not be able to be at home anymore and is looking at what those options could be.
Well, just how involved do you get? I mean, I assume, as in my personal situation with my own mother, your mother's not always all that cooperative. I mean, they really want to stay in their own home, and they just want it to be their way, and they're used to getting their way. How involved do you get in that?
Very. I mean, we meet with the families face to face. We don't do business with anybody unless we have somebody in that local area. All right. We'll certainly give guidance from afar, but really we won't take on a new client unless we have somebody in that area where we meet with them, guide them. You know, we'll talk with the senior if need be. You know, certainly we have. We've dealt with so many different situations where we could give advice, you know, to you and to your mom and the steps to take to hopefully, you know, get her to move in that right direction. When we go visit locations, we're going with the family to those locations. So we're acting as their advocate. I mean, there are companies that say they do what we do and they do it online and they're call centers, but, you know, I'm of the belief to really do, you know, you're dealing with people's lives here.
Sure.
All right. They're not commodities.
I have a follow-up question, Frank, but we're going to
sure.
take just a quick 1-minute break or so, and
Great.
I'll just follow up with a question on just that very topic.
Thank you.
If you are a parent or grandparent looking for a smarter way to invest in your child's future, unhappy with your career, laid off, tired of making money for a corporation or boss, semi-retired or retired, looking for relevance by reinventing your retirement years, U.S. Franchise Consultants has your answer. Affiliated with one of the nation's leading franchise consulting organizations, U.S. Franchise Consultants represents many hundreds of franchise ownership opportunities across more than 75 types of business categories. If you desire the freedom, success, and happiness achieved through ownership, chances are there's a great fit waiting for you. Go to their website, usfranchiseconsultants.com, or call Adam or Brian direct at 954-825-0397. That's 954-825-0397. You have everything to gain. Consultations are always without cost to you. Welcome back to Busy in Business, the weekly Saturday morning show dedicated to people who believe it's time to take control of their lives, with Adam Clatsoff and Brian Leonard. Now, back to Adam and Brian.
We're back with Frank Samson, our guest from Senior Care Authority. Frank, you mentioned that level of interaction with family members, that very special interaction that it takes, and maybe that's part of the difference that Senior Care Authority creates in its model. What type of person is best suited for this type of a franchise opportunity? What do you look for?
Well, a lot of people feel that you need a healthcare background, and certainly a healthcare background can be beneficial, but that's not necessary. I would say the one thing that, comes to mind, though there are several that I could go over with you, is, the ability, somebody who's a strong networker, somebody who has no fear of going to meet new people and talk with them. And I'm not talking about going out and I'm not saying selling, but I'm saying meeting people. One thing about this business is you do not have to create the demand. I know you mentioned you were in the insurance business. Sometimes you got to go to somebody and try to tell them why they need insurance. With us, the business does come to us because people, they need care. All right. So somebody who is, I talked about those, setting up those relationships with referrals. I would say that's the number one. Somebody with it. Now, if that particular individual doesn't feel they're the strong networker, it's a matter of getting somebody within the organization who is. And of course, with any franchise or any new business somebody's going to start up, they need to be kind of a self-starter. They gotta, they don't work for us. All right, we're not kicking them in the pants all the time.
Right.
So they got to be a self-starter. And of course, have a passion in working with the elderly and especially with the adult children. A lot of people think they work more with the elderly, but really it's working more with the adult children or a spouse of the particular senior. That's who they're mainly working with. And certainly, part of, I don't know if you've heard the term before, it's maybe a little bit overused, but, being part of this industry and the silver tsunami, as we call it. And it's, those are the things that come to mind right away. Those people that are good networkers, are good self-starters, are willing to follow a system that is proven to work.
And that system would include the marketing part, because it's occurred to me that everybody could really use this service. The question is, how do they find out about us? How do we market it?
So that's why we don't. It could be very expensive to market direct to consumers. We do that on the internet, of course, okay? But to do a lot of what we call B2C or direct to consumer advertising, the franchisees, that could get expensive, because you're not only trying to let them know about your service, but people don't understand what our service is. You say a real estate agent, they know what a real estate agent does. But maybe before real estate agents started, it took a lot of time to really, to build that. So from a marketing standpoint, all right, there's a whole lot of support that we're providing our franchisees on doing a lot of that B2C work, direct-to-consumer work for them online. We're kind of taking care of that. Our suggestion is they concentrate on building those relationships, and we provide them all sorts of assistance on that because we've done it. We know what works and the approach to take with elder law attorneys. We know the approach to take with those discharge planners at the hospitals and skilled nursing facilities. So those are things that we provide them with our training program, coaching, and guidance. And so they're not just, we don't just like hand them the key and say good luck to you. We're with them and helping them throughout the entire process of training and coaching and an ongoing basis.
Adam and I mention this almost every week on the show. Franchising is great, to be in business for yourself, but certainly we keep on saying the value is not by yourself alone. And having that additional support, Frank, sounds as though one, it's maybe a differentiator for Senior Care Authority compared to others.
Right. I mean, I hear it. I'm sure you hear it too. People say, well, God, could I just do this myself? I say, yes, you could. Nothing stops you from doing it yourself. Okay. But I have to say that the most successful people in this business, have purchased, a franchise. All right. There's not that many independent, real successful agencies out there because, it takes two, we have that experience and we could, really get people off to a much faster start, and going out and getting business. And the beauty of franchising, and you guys know this, is the ability to network with other franchisees. So other business owners that are doing the same thing as you're doing, doing it in different markets, but they're doing the same thing. And that's the beauty of this. And that's what excites me when franchisees are talking to one another and sharing ideas. And, we get them going, at the beginning, but on an ongoing basis, it's really input from everybody that helps.
Well, when you say ongoing basis, let's say you meet someone and at this time, the level of care necessary would be assisted living. And then, so let's say it's 2 years later, they need skilled nursing care. Do you work with them through these different phases?
Absolutely. Through again, the hope is that we get it right the first time and that we find the place for someone to live in the rest of their life. That's, sometimes that term is called aging in place. So they live somewhere and they're there the rest of their life. Okay. And, the thing, and so that we try to do that, but sometimes, somebody might need to go into nursing. Hopefully not. I mean, there used to be, it used to be that, either we're taken care of at home or you would go into skilled nursing. There wasn't assisted living, okay? But in the 90s is when licensed assisted living began, all right? And there are so many options out there now, and you could really live in an assisted living type of a community really for the rest of your life, even into hospice, etc. So we try to do that. But if somebody does need to go into skilled, absolutely we'll help them with that process.
Well, I think one of the problems you probably have is I don't know about other families, but I know certainly I felt a lot of guilt about what I was doing. I remember that probably the hardest conversation I ever had with my mother was when Carol and I had to tell her that the state of Florida no longer wanted her driving a car. That was a very tough day.
Yeah. And again, I've written several articles, and it's a big part of a book that I wrote on guilt, just what you're talking about. So we don't try to take on more than what we feel we're capable. So if we do, believe it or not, have franchisees that have been psychologists or psychiatrists. We even have, nurses, etc. So certainly if they have experience in that, great. But most of our franchisees, do not. And if we feel that they need to get some additional guidance and assistance, whether it's psychologically, whatever the case may be, we'll know the resources that they could go to.
And it's a very stressful time. I have some friends right now that are going through it, and it looks like the parents are going to have to come to live with the family. And this is not exactly something this guy's wife wants to have happen, so it's very stressful.
Yeah, I say this all the time to families, and our franchisees do as well. Is we do make a promise, all right, to our families. We promise them we are not going to eliminate their stress, all right, but we do promise that we will reduce it, and that's really we work very hard at doing that, and we accomplish that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had a grown child. I'm talking somebody in their 60s and even into their 70s. Hug and cry on my shoulder and thanking us. All right. So it's very stressful enough to deal with a parent. It's more stress when you don't know what to do about it.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to help. We can't eliminate that stress of going through what they go through with a parent or other loved one, but we can educate them and help them through that process. Again, one of the main reasons I got into it, because it is very stressful.
So here I am, maybe Frank, driving around in my car in Florida, or I'm at home in California, New York, or the Midwest, listening to this morning's show. And I'm thinking about the business model. Do I open up a storefront? Is there brick and mortar? Is this a model that I can do from home, for example? What skills do I need to best perform the work?
Well, almost, I would say all of our franchisees, with the exception of one, because it was their choice, do work at home. All right. So you're really thinking of yourself as a consultant. All right. But you could grow and have other consultants working for you as well. So yes, absolutely can work at home. It's a pretty, we were honored by, Entrepreneur Magazine and Franchise Business Review as one of the top low-cost franchises. So, our cost is, in comparison, I'm not saying cheap or anything, but in comparison to many others.
Well, it's just not that it's low cost. There are significant tax advantages associated with running a home-based business.
Exactly. There's tax advantages, and beyond the franchise fee, the cost is pretty low. Okay, so they don't have to go out and get equipment like you talk about in a restaurant, or they don't need to go get an office, sign some sort of long-term lease. So it's really the biggest cost after, paying for the training and the support and helping people get going is really collateral material and gas in the tank.
Sure.
Because they are going to be driving around, visiting locations, meeting with people, so they will spend time in their car.
Now, I know there are laws, Frank, that prevent you from, let's say, for example, quoting specific profit expectations, let's call it. But can you speak to, it appears like the margins are very reasonable, the overhead is low. How long would it take, for example, if I were to enter into Senior Care Authority, might I expect a return on my investment?
We have had franchisees that, and I would say probably the majority of them getting that return in a year. Okay, wow. Within a year. But some, don't, and, some that might buy multiple locations. It might take them a little longer because they're setting up multiple territories, multiple areas. You're right. I'm not supposed to be quoting, how much they can make, but that's why we have them talk to our own franchisees about that. But like you said, very, very minimal overhead. Most of the franchisees that start are 1 or 2 person operations, a lot of husband and wives or friends together, which is great. That doubles the power right away if you do have a couple people. But we have franchisees that now have, maybe upwards of a half a dozen or more people working for them, and some decide to stay as 1 to 2 person shops. Okay?
Well, as a 1 or 2 person shop, yeah. Do you have many of your franchisees operating as husband-wife deals?
Oh, a lot.
I was going to say, it seems to me this would be a natural.
Yeah. Actually, I interviewed the couple on my podcast and talked about working together as a husband and wife. And so people go listen to the podcast. If they are interested, I could send them a link. But we have a lot of husband and wife teams. Yeah.
And Frank, do you offer incentives? For example, let's say I'm looking at a territory here in South Florida. Do you currently have a territory available in South Florida?
We have many territories available. We do have somebody already, I think in the area where you are. We have somebody in the Boca area. I think that's where you're based. So we do have somebody there, but they don't cover the entire South Florida area. That's too large of a territory. So, we're talking the Miami, Lauderdale area. We're open. We have, like you said, about 50 different locations around the country and about, I think we're in 15, 16 states now. But we have a lot of territories available. A lot of territories. So understand that we try to keep a territory approximately within a 1 hour's drive of where you live. That's the goal. Right. So.
Well, yeah, but I wonder about that. If 1 hour's drive in Montana is different than a 1 hour drive in Broward County.
Well, that's why I say approximately. Okay. Obviously.
Are these territories divided by population or?
I would probably think maybe by the number of facilities.
That's what I'm asking. Yeah.
And
yeah. So you're absolutely right. You're pretty close there. We look at the number of licensed assisted living beds.
I could throw
that level of detail. Yeah.
I could throw a rock out the window here right now and hit a senior citizen.
Right.
Yeah. No. Right. So we do base it on the amount of assisted living beds. And, population, of course, is important, but I would say the population of those that are 65 and over are probably more important. Okay. Yeah. So we analyze all that. So like in Florida, the geographical territory will certainly be less, okay, than the geographical territory in Montana.
Sure.
Okay. So we're not just looking at the geographics. We're looking where are these locations. All right. Because even if you compare the coast, you compare New York and LA. All right. Per capita, there are more beds in the LA area than there are in New York. Okay. And so, it wouldn't be fair to the person in New York to base it just on population. All right, so there's a lot of factors that go into it, but I could tell you that even one territory is a lot to handle. So nobody has complained ever to me that their territory is too small.
Sure.
We give pretty good sized territories.
Okay, we're going to take a break once again, Frank, but we'll be back with a follow-up question as well.
Great, thanks.
If you are a parent or a grandparent looking for a smarter way to invest in your child's future, unhappy with your career, laid off, tired of making money for a corporation or boss, semi-retired or retired, looking for relevance by reinventing your retirement years, U.S. Franchise Consultants has your answer. Affiliated with one of the nation's leading franchise consulting organizations, U.S. Franchise Consultants represents many hundreds of franchise ownership opportunities across more than 75 types of business categories. If you desire the freedom, success, and happiness achieved through ownership, chances are there's a great fit waiting for you. Go to their website, usfranchiseconsultants.com, or call Adam or Brian direct at 954-825-0397. That's 954-825-0397. You have everything to gain. Consultations are always without cost to you. Welcome back to Busy in Business, the weekly Saturday morning show dedicated to people who believe it's time to take control of their lives, with Adam Clatsoff and Brian Leonard. Now, back to Adam and Brian.
And we are back with Frank Samson from Senior Care Authority. Frank, you talked about territories. Is there anything to prevent, for example, encroachment upon the territory that I'm assigned? Am I protected, if you will, in the territory?
You are absolutely protected. Yeah, so the territories are protected based upon the assisted living, where the assisted living locations are. So that's what we look at as your territory. So another franchisee, for example, cannot make a placement at any assisted living location in your territory unless it's referred to you or the two of you kind of talk on how that's going to be handled. So it's protected from that standpoint. If you use a hospital, for example, a hospital is not necessarily a protected territory. In most cases, if the hospital happens to be in the same area where that franchisee is, then certainly they're going to be working with the discharge planners there. But usually at a hospital, when people are being discharged, they could be going to a lot of different areas and different territories. So usually our franchisees are working together, if there's two or more in a particular area, and working together with those hospitals so they could service them better. But to answer your question, those territories are absolutely protected.
So when I look and say, okay, I'm involved in I'm a brand new franchisee, and my day-to-day, I'm now beginning day one. How do I go about finding and attracting families who are going to need my services? Do I literally go to visit those hospitals or the local caregivers and, begin that introduction and that team building, if you will?
Yeah. Well, first of all, people are going through a very extensive training program. It's over 60 hours of training, and then we have one-on-one coaching. So there's a lot to prepare before they step foot into those locations. The next step after training and coaching is to learn the various assisted living locations in their area. They have to visit them. We put together agreements because we didn't talk about it, but that's how they earn their money, is on a commission basis from these assisted living locations. It doesn't cost the family a penny, okay, which is a big plus. So I would say before I'll answer your question, but before they get to that point, there's probably a good, 3 months of training, coaching, and understanding your product, okay, 3 to 4 months before you do that. But we're preparing people for that, all right? So we'll give them advice saying, you may not go knocking on the doors of the hospital right away. We want to get a little more experience. There's other referral sources that will be maybe a little bit easier to deal with, initially. But we will guide them, provide them information. We have all sorts of presentations. We have direct mail, and it varies. They're not going out and cold calling. Okay, they're not doing that. Okay, they're not just going out and knocking on doors. All right, there's a process that we have that has worked extremely well. There's a lot of networking meetings that go on across the country with people in the industry, and everybody goes there for the same reason. Number one is education, and number two is to meet others that have services that they could refer to or get referrals from. So we set them up in those in going and meeting people first. So it's really going out and building relationships with people more than just cold call selling. I don't want people to think that it's cold call selling.
I understand. So after I'm trained, I'm now up and going, and I'm confident, and I'm at the stage where I can begin to create those networks. How soon could I expect, for example, my first placement?
We've had people get their first placement while they were in the training program. Okay.
Sure.
And we've had people that it's taken them, from the time they acquired the franchise up to maybe 9 months. So it could be as little as a few months into it to, up to 9 months, maybe worst case scenario. So we just try to prepare people, to say, hey, make sure that, you're prepared in case it does take you longer for whatever reason. Everybody's different. But, prepare from your own standpoint and your financing and all of that you have the dollars and, just in case it takes you a little longer.
Certainly. It seems that certainly in the elder care enterprise, if you will, or that whole arena, it's probably based heavily upon recommendations and referrals. Can you talk to that experience? In other words, if that experience with a certain family is, I've got to believe it's got to be one, a level of excellence that's recognized. Can you talk about that difference in excellence that Senior Care Authority provides versus maybe another?
Well, yeah, the thing about our particular business, this is a very friendly industry. Okay, certainly all of us have competition in what we do, and I have great respect for our friendly competitors. We talk all the time because we're out there trying to do good for people. It's but one of the our key differentials is we actually provide more than placement. As I say, I mentioned it, I just touched upon it at the beginning of the show, there's what we call elder care consulting. So, for example, and this is very, very common, all right, you meet with a family and you're talking to the daughter, and they're looking to place their mom, possibly. And that daughter says, Mom's dad passed away. Mom's at home alone. We don't want her to be alone. We're worried about her. She's had a fall. I think we should start looking. And the other daughter says, I think we could get a caregiver at home. And then you talk to the son, and the son's in denial. Says, I think Mom's fine. She doesn't.
Yeah, but all of this is assuming that Mom's going to cooperate or Dad's going to cooperate. I had one of my clients once tell me that he's going to pitch a tent on his son's lawn.
Yeah, and that's the other part of it. That's the other part of it. So what I'm saying is that we have that, you might have some agencies that would just do placement, and when when you're ready, give me a call. We don't do that, so we'll step in and really help that family throughout that process, whether it turns into a placement or not. However, we are charging a consulting fee for that. Okay, so we used to do so much pro bono work, and you tend to do some pro bono work in this industry, but you don't want it taking up, a lot of your time, okay, running a business. So I would say that, that is a key differential, is that we will, assist. That's just one example of many. All right. If we're, like I mentioned, let's say it's determined that maybe it is best to bring a caregiver in. Mom doesn't want to leave the home. Let's bring somebody in. All right. And we talk to mom, and mom, says, okay, I'll give it a go. Well, we'll help them in finding that caregiver. All right. We'll help them in finding that agency. All right. So we're more than just placement, even though that is so there's really two different revenue streams for our franchisees. One is placement, where they get paid by the assisted living facility, just like a real estate agent would get paid on commission. And the other is again, elder care consulting, where the family is paying us on a, pretty much an hourly or project basis. Okay.
Have you ever suggested to a family that mothers stay in her own home with 24-hour care?
Absolutely. But that's going to be quite expensive.
Yes, it is. I know that.
Yeah. That's, most people don't have, that type of an income. And I would say that in many cases, that's, usually that's where we get our referrals a lot from in-home care agencies. Will call us up. Hey, Frank, we've been servicing this family. They just can't afford this. Can you help them find the right place for their mom? All right. And they'll get 24-hour care in another location, but it's far less costly because of shifts of caregivers, et cetera. And, it's not necessarily one-on-one care. Okay?
Well, I don't know if how many of our listeners have gone through this experience, but I can tell you the mother is used to having her own way, and she does not like to give up control, and it's going to be one of the toughest things you ever do in your whole life. Yep.
And, again, we have all different ways to deal with that. All right. I'm not saying that we've got the magic formula, but, we've been through it enough times with different families, and we certainly give guidance to our franchisees on, various ways to go about situations. No two are the same, though. That's what's so unique about this industry. There's no two situations alike. And you are, I guess, I always like to tell people, hey, let me tell you some of what could be considered negatives. All right. I mean, it's not, the negatives is you are dealing with very stressful situations in most cases. So you have to be the type of a person that is just a great listener. You got to be a great listener, and, know that you're going to be seeing adults shedding some tears. All right. So you got to be that type of person to handle that situation, and not everybody can do that.
Well, from the children's perspective, I can tell you one of the things I'm finding a lot of is a family typically may have a child or two in college and then have a situation with the mother to go to a nursing home, and you got it coming at you from both sides.
Yeah, we call that the sandwich generation.
Wow.
So that's, again, that's why it's, it can be so stressful. I have a whole section in my book on the sandwich generation, where you're trying to manage two different things. It's interesting. People, prospective franchisees ask me, is it seasonal? Is this business seasonal? And at the beginning, when I started, I was thinking, how can it be seasonal? But where we find that sometimes there's a little slower of a period, is August. Why? Just what you said.
Sure.
Kids are going back to school. Mom or dad might need help, but they can't do everything.
Right.
So they might put it off a little bit.
Well, you mentioned certainly in terms of in the franchise scheme of, or the scope of affordability, Senior Care Authority is one of the very reasonable franchise opportunities available to the clients to whom we consult. When we talk about the cost, and we don't have to name a specific fee. We can always do that, and we encourage people to call us in that type of discussion. But relative to other elder care opportunities, can you just put that relative to maybe your franchise versus maybe another opportunity?
Well, I've looked at, so if you want to, let's say, compare our type of franchise to, let's say, an in-home care company or other companies in the senior care industry, I would say the franchise fee, the upfront fee, which is a one-time, fee, at least one time with us, but,
right.
They're pretty comparable. All
okay.
right. So, we might even be a little bit on the lower end, if you want me to state kind of range, you probably see it somewhere in the 40s to the $60,000 range, in that zone. Okay. So we might be kind of in the low to mid size there, but the huge difference is that with us, there's not much more to come up with after that.
Frank, we're going to go to a wrap here pretty quick, but the one question also is, do you have existing, if you will, arrangements or deals with these assisted living facilities?
Absolutely. Yeah. So,
sure.
It's, we have
that's your,
right.
It's not all from scratch. Certainly the opportunities there.
Exactly.
Frank, it's been great having your insight today, and you've been just a terrific example of why we say franchising and the opportunity and ownership has become a far better path to achieving that freedom and independence of owning your own business. Frank has written a book, The Aging Baby Boomers, and if you'd like a copy of that book, please, if you're interested in exploring more about Senior Care Authority, would like a copy of that book, and we can certainly tell you where you can obtain that, or if you'd like to receive a recording of today's show to share with family or someone you know, please just pick up the phone, give us a call at U.S. Franchise Consultants, 954-825-0397. That's 954-825-0397.